Hello and welcome back to another episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. I'm really excited to talk with a gentleman who I have stalked a little bit over social media over the years. Classic kind of hearing through the grapevine, hey, have you heard of Jay Ruane? Like, do you know about what he's doing with his criminal defense firm? Connecting with him on Facebook. We don't really know each other, but we're in the same general space. Let's watch each other from a distance, and then have the opportunity to close that distance when doing an episode of his podcast, the law firm Blueprint, with him and Seth Price earlier this year. And now finally getting to have the conversation over here. So excited to have this convo.
Dude, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be great.
So the one and only Jay Ruane. Jay, welcome to the show.
I'm waiting to hear that applause sound effect, but it didn't come. Okay, there you go. There you go. Listen, I'll take whatever I can get. You know, I'm willing. I've been on stages and told jokes and gotten nothing out of the audience, so I'll take even one person applauding. Thank you.
Jay, I will tell you, so I have that exact same issue, and I promise we'll get to the question in just a second, but I'm going to give away one of my quote-unquote trade secrets here and totally steal this from me. When I tell my first joke, very rarely do people laugh, because sometimes my jokes are a little just not in the vibe of the rest of the conference. So the joke that I didn't tell is, if you're not going to laugh at that one, it's going to be a very long time for us together. So that usually gets them rolling.
Awesome.
All right, Jay.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, you should totally steal it. Jay, it's time to answer the question. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
So I've thought long and hard about this, because I wanted to make sure that I gave an insightful answer, and I wasn't going to give something generic. But I think the one thing they don't teach you in law school is how to engage with your classmates in the right way. You know, when you get to law school, and I remember this from 25 plus years ago, it seemed like everything was a competition. I needed to outscore the person sitting next to me. I needed to write a better paper. I needed to get on law review, and that meant I was going to take their seat. But who cares? I'm going to win this game of law school. When in reality, what they need to be teaching us is how to engage and connect with our law school classmates, because for the most part, people who go to a law school wind up practicing in that general area, you know, in that location, in that county, in that state. And your friends from law school, and even the people who are strangers in law school, are going to be in the space, the legal space, with you for the next 4 or 5 decades. And if you can connect with them and make those personal connections, you are going to benefit so much more than if you try to outrank them for 3 years. Because at the end of the day, if you both pass the bar, you got licenses, you're going out there, and they may be able to refer you business. They may be able to help you with a case. They just may be someone that you can lean on because you have a shared history together. But so much of law school is, we got to compete. I got to be better than you. And I was lucky that I didn't fall into that trap, but I saw so many of my friends did. And I didn't fall into that trap because I was working 2 jobs, going to law school at night. And I said, I don't need this shit. I know what I'm going to do. I don't, I just wanted to know as many people as possible, because I knew I was going to get referrals from them, because none of them were going into criminal defense like I was.
Okay, so I love that. I'm gonna take the term classmates. I'm gonna drop in the word peers here, because this is so well translated to all stages of life. And I see a lot of law firm owners and lawyers who maybe are on an eat what you kill basis, who really see the game as like a zero-sum game, building law firms, et cetera. So for you, was that something, you mentioned that you kind of understood that idea in law school, that you didn't have to live by the rules of someone else's competition. When you then came out and started to launch into your own world, how did going through the world as someone who was more abundant, was it ever frustrating to then encounter so many zero-sum players, and how did you handle that?
Oh, absolutely. It's very frustrating to be in a community where people, they think they're fighting over a single client, or they're not going to share their stuff. I mean, I've been on listservs back, still to this day, where people are always posting questions saying, hey, can somebody share my motion? And somebody has written something similar, but they're takers, they're not givers. And I get it, that's their personality. But when you give, and when you give freely, The reality is that you wind up getting more back. I can guarantee you that I could have held on to all of my emotions and briefs and ideas and model cross examinations and all that stuff, and not shared it with anybody. And my revenue probably would have been the same. But because I have been able to share those things, share those ideas, and put it out there, I'm getting more and more referrals in a later stage of my career because people know I have an expertise in a particular area. And so we're still getting them. Because if I've given you everything that you know about it, that doesn't mean I've given you everything that I know about it. And I want to level up the skills of lawyering. I mean, for me in my industry, we're going up against the state, which has an unlimited budget, or the government that has an unlimited budget, highly trained people. They can get experts at the drop of a hat. We're really, David fighting Goliaths in the criminal field. And so I want other lawyers to be the best. Now, I hate it when people are, they'll take my motions and they'll literally just change and put their name on it. And I've seen this happen because I've seen people with motions and I'll be like, hey, did you catch the misspelling on page 9? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's a first draft of my motion. I made an error in it. You need to, and they're like, oh, it's here. There's a misspelling. I'm like, right. Like you didn't get the final copy of the motion. But it's just, I just want, what I dislike about the practice of law, and I'm sure this applies across everywhere, is that there are some lawyers who don't want to be good at what they do. They just want to get through it. And if you're going to come to my firm, if you're going to practice criminal law in the state of Connecticut, I'm going to hold you to the highest standard of excellence because so much is riding on it. So I expect you to go to CLE, push the envelope intellectually, push the envelope legally, be the best at what this is the career you chose, man. You go for it. Like, don't hold back. I hate the people that are just, moving through the motions. That bothers me.
Yeah, it's kind of just depressing sometimes to see people in any profession just going through the motions, right?
And I see it with police officers who do crappy jobs. We think of ourselves here in my firm as quality control for police departments. Because we make sure, look, if you're going to do your job, we're going to make sure that you do it. We're quality control for prosecutors' offices. That's what we do. We hold people to the standards to which they should apply themselves. So that's what we're about. I don't like seeing lazy lawyering.
Well, and one of the things I really like that I've heard you talk about, for example, in your Criminal Mastermind podcast, which I highly recommend, even if you're not a criminal defense attorney, go and find that podcast and listen to it. You're going to hear Jay talking within the walls of his program that he runs, which I think is just fantastic. I know people who are within those 4 walls and absolutely love what they're learning. And hearing you talk about how much space you make for success within your firm for your lawyers to succeed, including what sounds like to me a pretty generous compensation plan, a profit sharing plan, etc. And you have really elevated yourself up to an upper tier C-suite position within your firm. That is, to me, very abundant. At what point did you transition from I'm going to be a lawyer who owns a law firm to I'm going to be a law firm owner?
So I came to that probably about 20 years ago. I can remember standing in a conference room at a seminar, at a DUI defense seminar, and somebody said, "Can you get up and tell us who you are, where you're from, and tell us about your practice?" And I stood up and I said, "My name's Jay. I'm from Connecticut, and I'm a law firm entrepreneur." I didn't say a DUI defense lawyer. I didn't say criminal defense lawyer that everybody said. I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I own a law firm that services people. And I came to that because I was reading tons of business magazines and stuff early on in my career, because our space, what we talk about now, and the podcasts and the conferences, none of that existed 25 years ago. Right. And so I was going to outside sources, business books and the like. My first book I read was Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And I was like, this is great. And then Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. And I was like, these are books that I need to find the business component to running my law firm, because I really knew that there was something about running a business better. And if I got to a point, I think the reality is I'm pretty lazy, which is kind of counterintuitive to when you see all the different things that I'm in, but I get jazzed about the things that I like doing. And if it's something I dislike doing, I don't ever want to do it. And so building systems, getting to a point where I could run the show, but not have to go to court every day. has been great. So I find the talent that really wants to go to court. I'll overpay them because they're giving me the freedom to do what I love. I want to give them, tons and tons of opportunity to do the stuff that they love.
That's really powerful, creating that space. There's a quote that I love, which is "The leader is the lid," and it sounds like you're continually trying to raise the lid and build more space underneath you for people to succeed. In the early days, as you were leveling up and making space for people to succeed, what were some of the earliest positions that you hired for in order to get the work off your plate?
So one of the first things I did, first non-lawyer hire, was a content creator. And now Jen is my director of marketing because I have brought her along, gotten her the training, sent her out to PubCon, do all those things. But she was a good family friend of my wife's. And her father was a local attorney who saw me growing my business. And he remarked in passing, well, I don't know what my daughter's going to do with an English writing degree. There's no job there. And I was like, well, actually, I need someone who can crush content. And I mean, she's written 10 books for me by now.
Wow.
We've got thousands of pages of content. And now she manages a team of a videographer, a social media person. She does all that stuff. She outsources content and manages it. She's had teams over the years. So that was one of the best hires I ever did. But I didn't hire a director of marketing at first because I knew I was going to still be, my thumb on the, my hands on the wheel, thumb on the scale, whatever you want to call it. But I knew I needed somebody in that I couldn't create the content anymore. I needed somebody to focus on that. And then we hired underneath her, and then we added people to her team. And so I have a fully built out marketing department, which has really helped me attack problems quickly. Which is kind of cool. Hey, I see an opportunity here. Let's jump at it and get on it. And it was really helpful during COVID because I was able to keep people employed. And I say, hey, let's throw up a new website about this. Let's try to do this. Let's get some compelling copy to get people to respond to an email. And we kept ourselves afloat, really, with clients who never hired us because we had maintained a client list of people who we either chose not to hire or they couldn't afford us. So then we remarketed to them for pardons and expungements saying, hey, you didn't hire us. You may have lost your case. If you did, we can help you wipe your record clean. And we generated a couple $100,000 early in COVID that kept us afloat when we didn't have normal criminal businesses coming in. And that's just, we were able to, I said to Jen, come up with, 4 different emails and we'll test them. We'll split the audience and do some A/B testing and that type of thing. And I had somebody I could turn to. So she was probably one of the best hires early on. And it was a limited role, but she grew as the role continued to grow, which was great.
So I love that growth of in-house talent. So I'm curious, how much do you work in-house development of marketing versus outsourcing marketing?
100% in-house.
Oh, you don't see that as often these days. Like I watched over the past probably 5 or 6 years, the pure in-house operation for marketing kind of dwindled. How much does that even include, say, is website development outsourced, or do you even have that in-house?
Nope. I have an in-house web design guy.
Wow. That is really cool. So what is what does that team look like now, or what does your marketing output look like?
So I'd have to ask Jen. She's on maternity leave right
Best
now.
Answer.
We are churning out at least 1,000 videos a year.
Wow.
Across all different areas. Like we're doing, I talk about the steel trap in our thing. I said to my in-house video guy, I love crisp production value. Do a crisp style video for every single one of our lawyers, which gets tweeted out. It gets texted out immediately upon retaining. This is going to be your lawyer. This is their story. It's a 5-minute story about them, And so then people feel that they have a personal connection with their lawyer before they even have to get that intro phone call. So we do a ton of content. We're constantly refining our website. We refresh our look and feel of our websites probably every 3rd year, just to stay up. So, we're retheming it. We just launched a brand new Ruane Attorneys. It's funny. We won for Lawyerist last year for best website design, like in the top 10 websites. And I was like, yeah, in
Wow.
2 months we got a whole new one coming out, so we'll have to submit it next year and see if we get nominated and get that award again. So and the reason why we're doing that is because obviously trends in SEO change, so you got to be aware of that. And clients, especially my clients here in Connecticut, are used to a design aesthetic of like Apple and Target. They want something clean and polished. They want something that looks good and looks expensive. So you got to give that to them. And I think you can charge more when you look like you can charge more. I mean, there's a reason why I have marble floors in the hall in the lobby of my office that nobody comes to anymore. So I took the money and I mean, my office is like pristine. We've been here for a decade, and I'm like, they don't even need to paint it because people haven't been here for the last 5 years.
Well, that's all right. I mean, it sounds like you're still signing up cases successfully. So are you signing up? Do you sign up on the phone? Do you do it via Zoom session, DocuSign? Like, how does that look?
I'd say 99% of it is over the phone. My sales team is based overseas. My director of sales is based in Mexico, in Torreon, Mexico. In fact, it's interesting. I was just out at a DUI conference, a drug defense and DUI defense conference in Las Vegas last week. I brought my whole team out there so that they could learn from other lawyers. But then awesome. I flew Daniel in from Mexico. I was like, I've never met you. You've been with me for 3 years. Let's fly you in from Mexico. And so I got to have dinner with him, hang out, and it was awesome to just build that connection between an offsite employee and my internal team here. And so he manages a team of 4 people underneath him. He does all the sales. We've given him pricing that he can, that as a chart. If there's something complicated, he has our COO who he can go to, who used to run sales before he took it over. We're in a good spot.
That's really cool because it sounds to me, Jay, like you've managed to close some of the time gap. Even though I know criminal defense, you do prioritize a quick turnaround, there still is often this gap of maybe a multi-touch point, screener call, sales call, maybe even leading to an appointment that is in office. What did you do that helped you squeeze that time frame?
So this is interesting. So a number of years ago, it's probably like 20 years ago now, there was a show on VH1 called The Pickup Artist. Don't know if you remember it. It was a mystery. He would wear the crazy hats and that type of thing. And I was like, what the heck is this show? So I did a little deeping, and there was a book called The Game by Neil Strauss. And so the Pickup Artist show was based on this Rolling Stone reporter going into this community of quote unquote pickup artists. And as a single guy at the time, I was like, maybe I can learn something from this. And then I read the book and I was like, yeah, I don't want to meet somebody like these guys meet somebody. That's just not where I am at. But one of the messages resonated with me from the book. And that was, if you're trying to pick up someone of the opposite gender, you meet them at a bar, the very next thing you need to do is get them to go to a second location with you. And then a third location with you. And the reason being is that in their brain, now they've known you 3 different times. So it elongates the relationship that they have with you. And so even if you're just crossing the street, they now have 3 sense memories of time with you. So you reduce their guard because I've known him for so long. We've been to a bunch of different places with them. And I thought to myself, boy, that's genius, because if my leads talk to multiple people in my office, they have to reject all 3 of them in order to say, we're not hiring you. So when they call in, they get reception who say, I'm going to get you to our best intake person. And that intake person then does an intake with them who talks about, hey, and by the way, there's a lawyer. Oh, you're going to love this lawyer. She's great. She really has the prosecutors and the judge's number. She does all those things. Hold on. Let me elevate you to my supervisor, because I want to make sure that they're going to be with you. Then their supervisor gets in. So if the person doesn't want to retain on the phone, they are rejecting the receptionist, the intake person, and the intake closer. Right. And then if we need to, we'll bring in the COO now, or the intake lawyer, to just close the deal. Now you got to reject 4 people in order. You got to say no to 4 people. People don't want to say no. They want to say yes. Right. So and we obviously we have it scripted, and we have things that we say that help. But by the end of that 3rd or at least the 4th phone call, we're at a point where it's like, hey, of course you're going to hire us. let's just move to the next step. We presume the sale. We don't ask for the sale because they're calling us. They know we cost money. So we want to have those touches, but we go 7 days a week with intake. We have two people on intake on Saturdays and Sundays. We have a receptionist and we have a closer that's on the phone on the weekends. And so that's been the best thing that we've ever done. It's not unusual for us to retain and have our payroll covered and our sales quota met for the week by Sunday night. Everybody's,
Wow.
and then Monday and through Friday is gravy, so to speak. And what I'm hearing, at least what my lawyers are saying to me when they come back from court, is people are like, yeah, I called somebody on Monday, but they told me they were all set. They already hired a lawyer. I'm like, yeah, because they hired us. So we're taking traffic away from other people that way.
Okay, so what I love about what you're saying is there are firm owners who I've worked with, and one of whom actually is in a top 7 metropolitan market. And I know that you have a multi-7-figure firm, and he's concerned about the possibility of being able to get to even the $2 or $3 million mark in a top 7 metropolitan market. And you've scaled to this multi-7-figure that is greater than that. I'm curious, with that individual, let's imagine you're talking to him. He has that restraint of, I only think there's maybe $2 million in revenue here. I know you have 9 listed locations. You got lots of attorneys, et cetera. What would you tell him to be more expansive about what his potential market is?
Well, I mean, it depends on the field that he's in, but if it's PI or
It's
criminal,
criminal defense.
okay, well, all you got to do is go down to the courthouse and pull the docket and see how many people are arrested over the course of a month. And you'll see what your opportunities are there. One of the things that I have strived to do over my career is I started as a DUI lawyer. We had a criminal practice. It kind of went away when I was focusing. Now we're about 50-50 DUI and criminal. But in reality, I knew that every year there would be a certain number of DUI arrests a year. I wanted to own 10% of that market. So 14,000 in the state, I wanted to have 1,400. That's where we're at about now, right?
Wow.
But there is tons of opportunity in any space in criminal law because there's so many hurdles to opening a practice. Like you, Charlie, you're not a lawyer. You can't start a law firm, but every lawyer can, right? And that's the thing. Like we have these artificial barriers to entry that allow very, very weak lawyers to survive, which means that if you are not a weak lawyer and you install business practices and you do your work by giving good services, the ceiling is almost endless. I'll tell you, I never thought I would be high 7 figures flirting with 8. I mean, I'm in a state that has 3 million people. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, if you're in a top 10 market, there's no reason why you shouldn't be an 8-figure criminal defense firm. You just have to really go at it. And it starts with having the best talent, the best educated talent, and going all in on marketing. I was looking at my numbers. I'm still only spending about 20% of my budget on marketing. I probably can take less profit and put more into marketing and get more money. But you got to be aggressive.
That percentage, that 20%, that's that 20 to 25% range. I'm glad you mentioned it, Jay, because that is the exact percentage that I prescribe for a firm that is pursuing aggressive growth, especially at the size that you're at. You can put even more of that money into marketing. I mean, it's kind of necessary to create that continual leveling up for the firm. Now, in the journey of, let's say back when you were upper 6, flirting with 7 figures.
Oh, that was the worst. It was like 4 years and I was so close and I couldn't get there.
So I refer to the range between $600,000 and $800,000 per year in revenue as the shitty valley, because you go through it and you basically your profit margin goes down because it just feels like everything is being spent on personnel. You need a new office. Suddenly technology gets more expensive. There are 3 pieces of software you realize you didn't have. And so you don't make any more money, but you added revenue. It drives people crazy. Like you get to the other side and it starts to even out. You get back to normal percentages. So for the firm owners that are, in that area, ascending up to the 7 figures, maybe even low 7 figures, and thinking about multiplying it, there is the capacity issue that they talk about of when should I bring in the attorney? When I want to produce more leads, but need someone to have the capacity, or do I bring them in after I've produced the leads and I pile them onto them?
So here's the thing. I think you need to invest in your business by hiring sooner rather than later. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that most law firms are understaffed,
Yep.
and that is because staffing is the most expensive thing to add to your law firm. But
Mm-hmm.
it takes at least 90 days to get a lawyer, unless they are, a true unicorn. You do things a certain way in your law firm, and it takes them about 90 days to get their feet comfortable with, I know what I'm doing, I know the order that I should do them in, and I know how to do them the firm way. So, and unfortunately a lot of firms don't have any sort of onboarding training. They
Yeah.
just, dump somebody in a seat, hand them files and say, let me know when you need more files. And that's no way to run a business. But the reality is that it's going to take you some time. So it's an investment in your firm, and yeah, it may come out of your profit one year, but there's not only monetary profit, and that's one of the biggest things that I think lawyers have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I am willing to give up financial profit for lifestyle profit, and
Oh,
lifestyle
yes.
profit for me is spending more time with my kids, working fewer hours, getting to a point where I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, rather than being stuck doing things I don't want to do because I took the client's money.
Yeah, that's that prioritizing how you see freedom is a
Yeah,
huge difference maker. And I see a lot of firm owners. There are sometimes profit margin quotes. Oh, your firm should be doing at least 50%, 60% profit. I'm like, do they own a $300,000 law firm where they're the only
right.
attorney? Like, what are we talking about here? When you're building say the budget for your firm, do you have a percentage split that you try and stay around for different chunks of the firm?
Not really, and that's something that I'm working on now. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going back historically. We have a little bloat. We just fired somebody yesterday, and we're thinking about firing another person in the next week, depending on some factors that we really have to think deeply on. So we are overstaffed, and I think I can make more money if I offloaded these people. But I look at my lawyers and I look at their caseload, and I could probably get rid of two lawyers, and I could
Mm-hmm.
step in and do that work. And there's an
Right.
extra $250,000+ in my pocket, but I don't want to go to those courts and do that kind of work.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to spend that money and not take it as profit if it means I get to spend an afternoon with you, right? And do the stuff that I want to do, working on scripts. I just came up with an
Yeah.
idea. One of our courthouses is notoriously slow and inefficient. So I'm going to go into my studio after we get done here. I'm going to cut a new video that's going to get texted out to the clients and say, okay, you've got a unique courthouse. It's different than most. I'm going to walk you through how things happen here, so you are aware of why you may get a note from the courthouse, be there at 9, but we're saying don't get there till 11, and we got you. And there's a reason for that.
Wow.
And so, I want to be pushing the envelope on that end of stuff, on the customer service side, because I view us as a customer service firm that serves the legal space. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a legal entrepreneur, but I also want us to focus on customer service. We measure NPS, we measure our 5-star reviews. All of that stuff matters, because at the end of the day, I look at the people who are in the same space that I'm in, and it's funny. I have two lawyers that are in my criminal mastermind that have offices within 15 minutes of my office, and they
Really?
only do criminal work. One of them is actually in one of my spaces because he left his partner and said, "I don't even know where to start getting office space." I said, "I got an empty office 10 minutes from you. Just use it
Wow.
until you need to get out." So I have a competitor sharing office space with me. Now I have the GBP. He doesn't. But hey, that's what you get when I give
Yes.
you the office space for free, right? So it's like I said, I'm not competing with them because they're going to pull in clients that I won't pull in.
Yeah.
But I want to be in a situation where I don't even know where I was going with this. I
That's
just like,
okay. I
yeah,
know there was wisdom in there.
there's
That's the
wisdom in there
thing.
somewhere. Yeah.
Well, you talk about that investing in the customer experience, the customer
Oh
service
yeah.
side of all that. I also know and respect you as someone who is really good at marketing. I mean, even before we started this conversation, the pre-show, you mentioned how much you love coming up with a Google Ads campaign. You're
Yeah.
still operating in pay per click, and it's interesting because there are a lot of people who would hear that and say like, "Oh, Jay, you have to delegate that to someone else," right? There's the obsession sometimes, like I think sometimes an unhealthy obsession with the concept of delegation to the point of abandonment. So you're still involved in that. I'm curious, one, why you haven't delegated it, but also two, what you love most about it.
So one of the things I love most about it is that it scratches the itch of me. I have a crazy idea. Let me see if I can monetize it. Let me see if I can turn it into something. I'm blessed that I do have an in-house web designer that's on salary. I mean, it's my brother. He has his own business, but I just pay him and give him benefits so that I can call him up on a Friday at midnight and say, I just had this idea. What can we do with it? And he'll think on it and say, okay, give me a day and I'll wireframe something up for you and we'll get going. So I have the ability to be nimble and fast and come up with ideas. Then I turn to my content person and that type of thing. But I like to get into the weeds a little myself.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll be honest with you. I did outsource my pay-per-click for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very large player in the legal space. I won't mention them by name. They still talk about how I outsource my pay-per-click to them in some of their presentations. But I wanted to do YouTube pre-roll ads, and I said I want to do
Okay.
YouTube, and they couldn't get it going. They didn't know how to do that. And so I said, well, shit, I can figure this out myself. So I went on promo.com. I created a 30-second and a 15-second video. And then I watched a couple of YouTube videos and I said, I'm smarter. I went to law school, dude. I'm smart enough to figure out how to build a YouTube pre-roll ad campaign and target my demographic and locations. And in the last 2 years, we've served over 15 million 15-second ads in my home state, and some 6-second ads. And that is helping our name recognition go through the roof. So there are things that if I wanted to outsource that, it would have been who's the right vendor. And
Right.
I just said, you know what? Sometimes I got to just get my hands dirty. There's something to be said for being the CEO and letting other people do things.
Mm-hmm.
But the most successful CEOs I know also get deep into the weeds on certain things because it can move the needle. And maybe it doesn't. And that's the other thing
Yes.
too. I have done plenty that I've gotten, hours or weeks or months into projects and then just said, yeah, this is not going to work the way I thought it was. At least it was my time that I wasted and I didn't spend money on somebody to some vendor or somebody in-house to do something that kind of went nowhere. So I know a lot of people talk about how you can run a law firm and only work 2 or 3 hours a week, but the best CEOs I know are working much more than that because they love what they're doing and they like to iterate it.
They've shifted the definition of what work looks like fundamentally. It sounds to me like
Exactly.
you have shifted that definition for yourself.
Yeah, a lot of my work is deep thought, and that's okay if I'm the only one who can think the way I can think. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is we'll have my weekly leadership meeting, and I get a preview of the agenda, and it's how do I solve these problems, and it's my firm administrator and my COO. And I'll be able to say, okay, this is how you solve that. This is how you solve that. And they'll say, we never would have thought of that. I'm like, right, you don't have to. Your job is to find the problems. My job is to devise the solution. And if I can't devise it, I'll call on people like you or other people out there and say, hey, Tom Tona, I'm running into this issue. Like one of the things that Tom does is he brought in a mental attitude coach. I don't know what he calls it, but just like for resilience and that type of thing. And I'm like, ooh, my people get beaten up a lot. Why don't I do a training to start with somebody and then we see if that's an added bonus we want to give them as part of their package here. And you also have to understand the individual lawyers. Just like I am different from everybody else, my individual lawyers all have different needs and I strive to give them what they need. One of my lawyers is out at the eastern end of Connecticut, and he is exceptionally smart, like wickedly smart, right? But is an introvert. And so I said, listen, we're going to give you an office, but it's going to be you alone, not staff. You're not going to have somebody like, hey, what are you doing? You want to go get some lunch? Like it's an office just for him. He can get out of his house where he's not stuck at home, but I've given him what he needs to get the best work out of him. Another lawyer here loves popping in and asking me legal questions. I'm all for that. If that's what makes you motivated, bring it on. Let's talk. That type of thing. So it's also about recognizing your team and putting them in a position to give you the best success. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. A couple of things that you said there, Jay, I really want to highlight, like pull out, circle them in red, run the highlighter over them, because they run counter to what gets preached in a lot of the more highfalutin You're the Amazing CEO books, where it's usually written by someone who's a CEO of, say, a 500 million or multi-billion dollar company. And it skews the reality of running a 7 or early 8-figure business where there's still work to be done. It's not all strategy play. And you've highlighted a couple of those things, including on the managerial side, making the time and space to support team members, especially the critical team members, which a high revenue producing attorney is a critical team member in every law firm.
Right.
So how do you avoid some of those CEO traps that I think have been over preached at times in the law firm owner space?
Well, I think for me, I've always come to it with deep introspection, and I was blessed early in my life with a father who was a criminal trial lawyer. And I saw what he was doing, and I said to myself, I want to do something like that, but I don't want to be only a criminal trial lawyer. Like, I want to have more time with my kids. And this is not, a therapy session where I say my daddy ignored me, because he didn't. He was actively involved in my life, right?
Right.
He coached baseball teams and basketball teams for my siblings and stuff. And he was always around. We always ate dinner together. But after dinner, he would sit at the dining room table and work on his cross-examinations. And the extent of my involvement with him in my, middle school and teenage years was I'd make him tea every night and bring it to him. Like, that was the extent of our relationship. So I knew going forward, when I was building this firm, I wanted to build a firm that supported me to be able to leave at 4:00 to pick up my daughter and go to the volleyball game. That's what mattered to me. So it was self-awareness as to what matters to me. And I have preached since we started this firm and started scaling that this is what's important to me. And I want you to have it be important to you. Whatever your lifestyle is, embrace it. And so, it's unfortunate. We let somebody go yesterday who was a part-timer, remote worker, but we were listening to her recorded calls, and she's got music blaring in the background and people arguing in the background, and the client can't hear her. And my firm administrator said, look, I'm going to show everybody why we let this person go. I'm going to play the recorded call for them and say, look, Jay wants you to have a life. He wants you to have a family. And he's made work from home a priority for all of us, if that's what you need. But there's also a respect that needs to come back to the firm. Like, you have to be able to respect the firm. And we've talked to this employee multiple times. They chose not to respect the firm. And so we let that person go. And everybody else was like, wow, it's sad to see her go, but that's not cool what she was doing to the firm. Right. And so I have one of my pod leaders, and that's another thing. I steal things from other people. We never had pods like they do in personal injury, but I said, I can't put a lawyer at the head of a pod because, they could wind up disappearing for 2 months on a trial. How do you run a pod with somebody who's not around? So I made paralegals my head of my pods, and they have 2 lawyers that work for them. And so the paralegal tells them where to go and what to do. And those paralegals have been with me for, a decade or more. So they know how things operate, and I trust them. But I have one of my pod leaders. She's at home. She's got 4 kids. She just had her last kid a couple of months ago. And she runs her whole show remotely. I'll see her once or twice a year, but I know that I can trust Ashley. Or the other Ashley. We got a lot of Ashleys in the office. But I know I can trust them and just say, do what's in the best interest of the firm. And they will absolutely do what's in the best interest of the firm, because I give them I'm not managing like a dictator. I don't even introduce people as my employees. Like, when I was out in Vegas, someone was like, oh, who's this? Oh, this is Dave. We work together. Here's a,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, you're the boss. I'm like, right, we work together because together we build something. You don't work for
Yeah.
me. You work for the firm. I work for the firm, and we all work together for the firm. The firm just happens
Mm.
to have my name, but we're all in this together, and we pick each other up when needed, for sure.
That is such a powerful, powerful perspective. I hope people listening to this episode, when you start looking around at the advice that you hear, and I think, again, I'll mention it again, people need to subscribe to the Criminal Mastermind podcast, Law Firm Blueprint. If you're a criminal defense attorney, seek out Jay's Criminal Mastermind program for sure, because this is very real thinking. This is not, this is like, it's a beautiful combination, I hear, Jay, between the working towards the big vision aspirational while still having the common sense to understand your journey, the realities of it, without it being the reality that everyone else traps themselves into in the small way.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that scares me. I don't want somebody to have spent their time at my firm and leave and say, boy, that was terrible. And either they're with me for a year or 10 years. I mean, I have a paralegal, Krista, who's been with me. And it's funny, she wound up with me. She was the paralegal to my father's partner before we started our firm. She came back from maternity leave. She didn't have a job. There was no job security. Her old boss told her, hey, I got no work for you anymore. So I hired her on the spot with no budget or I didn't need her, but I knew she was a hard worker. And I knew so she has been with me. She has done, at that point, we had somebody doing PI in the firm. She ran all that stuff. Then she did criminal. Then she helped on intake. Then she did just general paralegal stuff. Then during COVID, before COVID and during COVID, she was overwhelmingly working on the pardons and expungements and handling 300-400 cases a year, managing it herself, getting stuff done. Now she's come off of that because that business has tanked because of the changes in the state law. And so now we led her into another role running a pod that's brand new to us, that we're taking some stuff, and she's embraced that. Like, I want her to have had a satisfying career, and I have to keep this firm going because, I mean, I don't want to put her on blast, but she's 52 years old like me. Like, she's not going anyplace else. So I want her to be happy here. Like, and when I retire, if I leave before she's ready to leave, this firm needs to be able to keep her going. I fully plan on handing the keys over to my people in 8 more years. I told them at our last annual meeting in December, I'm out in 8 years. So, and I told them 2 years ago, I was out in 9. In December, this past December, I got 8 more years. This year, I got 7 more years. So I'm letting them know it's coming.
That is really, really cool. Well, boy, oh boy, I know what I need to have you back on the show to talk about, which is how you're thinking about your exit. So we'll bookmark that one for round 2, sure. Jay.
All right. Anytime you want me, I'm around. I have the time.
Yeah, it's a blessing. So Jay, if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, the firm, Criminal Mastermind, etc., what's the best place to send them?
You can hit the Criminal Mastermind. If you want to just chat with me, you can go on my appointments page, criminalmastermind.com/appointments. You can book a call with me. It's free. And we can chat a little bit more. You can, obviously, there's the podcast. There's the Law Firm Blueprint I do every Thursday with Seth. I'm on all the social platforms, or you can just email me. You can find me pretty easily. The only thing I say is, don't just randomly send me a friend request on Facebook because you heard this. Like, send me a DM and tell me who you are. But I get all of these, I want to, like, you give a speech and then 20 people friend request. I'm like, I don't know you. Like, I don't know if you're a Russian bot or a real person. So send me a DM, let me know who you are, and then we can connect. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, wherever. I've got a new thing I'm working on, Charlie. I can't wait to launch it later this year. I think I can get to 500,000 subscribers on a brand new YouTube channel in the next year. And so I am working on that right now. We're about to go in the studio next week. I'm not going to be the face of it, but I have an idea that I think is going to get traction, and I can't wait to launch it and tell you about it, and then see if we can talk a little bit more about it.
Oh, well, boy, oh boy, yes. Yes, we will, Jay. We will make that happen. All right, last question for you. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
Okay, so let's go. Reading. I just got The Fourth Turning. My trainer brought it to my attention, so I just picked it up. I haven't cracked it yet, so I'm reading that. But I am also reading concurrently a very long biography of Napoleon Bonaparte, which has
Ooh,
really been interesting, following his whole life story. So I'm about 500 pages into that 800-page book. And so it's taken me a while to get through it, but I'm
yeah.
going to do The Fourth Turning. So that is something, and that's about how there about 80 to 100 years there's a massive fundamental change in the country, and they're predicting one for the next 10 years, and they're trying, and they go back historically and say you can see the patterns emerge, and they're starting to emerge now. So they're like 2030 is going to be a huge year. So I'm like, oh, I might as well see what's coming, or at least see what these people think is coming, so I can be prepared for it.
There you
So
go.
that's what I'm reading. What I'm watching right now is I just finished Hacks, but I'm watching the Monster Menendez brothers. I've done that in the last 48 hours. I'm binging a bunch of episodes of that, which is wild watching a criminal defense story dramatized, which is good. My uncle's best friend is Nathan Lane, who plays Dominic Dunn in it, so I always watch anything that Nathan does. And then
Dropping
what's the other
that
one?
fact right at the end with someone who was a theater major in college. Come on, Jay. I mean,
Oh, so my uncle and he went to high school together. My grandfather and Joe Lane, his real name's Joe Lane. Nathan Lane's father passed away within like months of each other. So they were the two high schoolers who dads had died. They formed a bond. They've been friends ever since. So I always go see him whenever he's on Broadway, and so anything that he's in, I'm all about. He's a fantastic person, and just hilarious in person. But watching his stuff, and then what was okay? That's reading, that's watching,
listening to.
listening to. Here's the thing: I can't listen to music anymore because something about my brain over the last couple of years is I'll get one sentence of a song and I'll loop it in my brain and it'll drive me crazy.
Oh
So I
yeah.
used to love music, but I just can't do it anymore. So now I'm listening to the New York Times daily podcast, a headlines podcast, which
Yep.
is like 10 minutes of the most important stories to know, and the Apple News audio. So that's what I listen to on my drive now. Is I've become a talk radio, I guess, type person. What those old people do, but it works for me.
That counts. That very much counts. It's funny.
And I'm also
The
listening to They Don't Teach You That in Law School podcast.
Thanks for the last minute plug there. I appreciate that, Jay. Well, Jay, truly, thank you so much. This is exactly what I was hoping for, is just that insight, that energy, the practical applied wisdom. Like when we connected doing law firm Blueprint, and we did a little discussion pre-show before that while we were waiting for Seth, and it was just immediate like, oh yeah, I totally
Yeah.
I knew I was going to like this guy because I've heard some of the stuff that he said. It's been a great connection, and I look forward to more of it in the future.
Yeah, so am I. I'm just like, I can't wait to show you how many followers I get in a year. I think that's going to be awesome.
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm stoked. Jay, thank you so much, and we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.
Bye.